Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, your podcast for all things gardening and homesteading. And we're going to have a little bite-sized episode for you today. David was telling me earlier he thinks he's just going to put these out on Thursdays to kind of give you guys just a little extra something to chew on, and that's going to be great. I figured today I could talk about something that has been very elusive all my life, starting when I used to go to the feed store when I was a little boy, and I would see it sitting on the magazine rack right there, and it's the Farmer's Almanac.
Yeah.
Everybody's familiar with the old Farmer's Almanac. It's beige colored, has all these swirly designs on it. It looks like Ben Franklin on the front. I don't know who that guy is.
I don't either.
I don't, but he's some Quaker, or maybe he's like Ben Franklin's cousin.
I don't recall. It could be the man who started it. I believe that almanac was started in 1772. Don't quote me on that, but it's been around for a hot minute.
Yeah. But the thing that really everyone knows about the Farmer's Almanac is that it's full of old sage wisdom.
Yeah.
Right? And how much of that wisdom is true?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, there's people that are like true believers in it. There's people that, buy it out of tradition, or it's, you think back like of why it actually existed in the first place.
Yeah.
We didn't have AI and
We didn't have internet.
and,
Yeah.
So you didn't have anything to reference at the touch of your fingers like you do now. So it was a great way probably back then to spread knowledge and information. And who knows what the information looked like back then compared to now.
So I will say something. I'm really good at getting off on tangents, and I'll try to keep this quick. But you brought up AI, and it's funny because we're inundated with so much AI slop now. We call it slop because it's just vapid nonsense, right? Just trying to get clicks. What's funny is I think back then when the only medium was around was print, they also had slop. I don't know if you've read an old-timey newspaper. Nothing but slop. None of it's true. It's just like, it's about alligators in the sewers. It's about chickens without their heads cut off, and about a guy that consistently grows pumpkins that are 2,300 pounds. It's slop. But
they can't grow pumpkins.
You can, but I'm sure that this guy wasn't, right? One thing that I remember from the Farmer's Almanac when I was a kid is like all the advice that was in there that had nothing to do with farming whatsoever. Like the best time of year to get your hair cut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what even is that about? I don't know. I guess it's just a compilation.
I never understood what a lot of that meant. The most I've ever really delved into it was like looking for planting dates.
Yeah.
Because that's, gardening is what I've done for most of my life as a living, and people always would want to know when to plant this, when to plant that, and that's where they would go for that information. We gave away, it was called the Greer's Almanac. It was this little like newspaper style print, all black and white almanac. We gave them away for forever. They were dirt cheap. You buy like a case of 300 books, and they were really thin. Nothing like the
had
old
a couple
Farmer's
ads
Almanac.
in it. That's probably how they paid for it.
Had some crazy ads where you could buy like you might be able to buy a voodoo doll or something in
Yeah,
there.
X-ray glasses.
X-ray glasses were in there one year. Just something outlandish. But then you had like the planting dates, the moon phases, and you had like fishing and hunting related items in there. Best time to go fishing based upon the tides, which I know like in oceanic life, the moon phases are very vital to ocean life.
Yeah.
Tides and so on.
We know that fish do operate according to the tides.
But I'm not sure that I am a believer in planting by the moon.
So the old Farmer's Almanac would give you advice about when to plant your different crops throughout the year based on the moon.
Yeah, like the Greer's Almanac, you would open it up and it would tell you to put your transplants, like your started seedlings, in but on these dates of this particular month. Tell you to plant your root crops on this date. Plant your plant seeds for above ground crops here. Plant seeds for below ground crops here. And those were all based upon the moon phases. And to my understanding,
what contrasts that is that, like, if you look at other advice, it kind of tells you plant it after the first frost or a lot of other environmental
Yeah,
sort of things that have nothing to do with the moon. It's about the environment.
right.
Right.
And that's a lot of times you'll see it says, hey, plant above ground crops between the new moon and the full moon, and then below ground crops between the full moon and the new moon. And there's probably some like more specifics in there, but I feel like at this point in my life, I've planted them at every stage of the moon because, and I don't see a difference. But then again, I'm not really looking, and
I feel like
I don't know.
it's like trying to give your cucumbers a horoscope reading. I don't. It's.
I mean, maybe there's people out there that have like some really like tried and true
Yeah.
experience with it, but I have the most experience with time, temperature,
Right.
moisture, elemental, just like we're talking about, environmental, elemental factors that make me successful, and those change
Yeah.
based upon the season, the year. Like right now,
All the environmental
it's
factors.
February and it's warm already.
Right. Right.
You know,
It's not to say that it will remain warm the
No.
entire time.
But there's a
yeah,
false sense of spring here.
There
and,
is.
And then again, it might not be false.
It might not.
I
I was actually just talking to someone at work right before I came here, and I believe that tomorrow's date in '97 is the anniversary of the '97 Great Freeze.
okay.
Where it was a big ice storm,
ice storm?
and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the power was out everywhere because it made all the power lines come down and all that. So we're not out of the weather yet.
No, never.
Yeah, never. Well, not until like May, right? Something like that.
And I think like a lot of people, myth or not, but people look at that particular publication for weather advice,
Mm-hmm.
like about hurricanes or great weather events. But you and I both know this, but it's very difficult to predict weather very accurately past 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why
you know,
that's why people don't.
And we've got weather forecasted for a whole year
Yeah.
before the year ever even gets here. So
Right.
like,
That's also why the Weather Service will come up with all the names for a hurricane every year, even though we
Yeah.
very rarely get the 26. But they have names because they don't know. Nobody
I have
knows.
no clue.
No, they just have
So
best
it's
guesses.
just kind of interesting, like the things that people would look at as a reference point.
Yeah.
And were they ever really true? Were they more accurate way back when?
So I tend to think that two things can kind of be true at once, right? So I tend to believe that some of the more folksy sage wisdom stuff is complete garbage. Like Puxatawny Phil, since we're on the topic of winter, right? We look at this Groundhog's Day and Puxatawny Phil now as some sort of silly relic of the past.
Yeah.
And maybe people took it seriously in the 17 and 1800s. I don't know if they did. They may have, or maybe it's always been silly. But also, maybe there's something to it. Maybe two things can be true at once. I don't know.
I don't know,
or
man.
maybe the Farmer's Almanac can be true most of the time and just not
As
always.
a Southerner, I'll give more leverage to Big Alligator Country being right
Big Al, yeah.
than Puxatawny Phil. So,
But I think that I think there's probably some value in things like the Farmer's Almanac and Groundhog's Day,
Yeah.
and that there are traditions,
right?
right? These are
Absolutely.
traditions. Maybe don't take them so seriously, but there is value in there that's beyond just nostalgia.
And I'll definitely say I'll never, I have no true knowledge of disproving that like planting by the moon doesn't work.
Right.
Some people say scientifically it doesn't, but it's kind of like you said. It's for some people it's a tradition. It's the way they do things, and that's important.
Yeah.
You stick to what works for you.
Right, absolutely. That's true. If it's an easy way for you to remember, because it's not far off, right? Whatever advice they're giving to you isn't so far off that it's completely wrong, right? They're not telling you to plant carrots in June because of the moon, right? They're
Yeah.
telling you around the time that you're supposed to do it. They're just giving you a different reasoning.
Yep.
So
And that's and how much time and energy went into figuring all that out every year? Like, does it take them all year to figure this out? It's just there's so many things that I could think about from this one publication that will never be answered.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, that's. I guess you don't have those in your store anymore, right?
We do.
Do you?
So the Greer's Almanac and kind of layering back to you saying like talking about tradition
Mm-hmm.
as people age and the older generation ages out, the almanac becomes less and less of a staple.
Thinner and
Um,
thinner. Yeah.
and the old farmer's almanac still looks exactly the same
Right.
as the day I started.
And it's got quite a few pages in it.
That the Greer's almanac was always like the same size. It was real thin, but it was straight to the point.
Yeah.
But the Greer's almanac, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they went out of business, and then the Farmer's almanac went out of business at the end of last year or beginning of this year. Then there's the old Farmer's Almanac, which
Right.
they swear they'll be around forever.
Yeah.
So there's many different publications out there, that are doing this information gathering and publicizing.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting, as the generational changes in growing food and gardening come, the almanac is not as much of a staple to me as it used to be.
People change the way that they digest information,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, perhaps we're killing the almanac right now, right? Instead of someone who wants to put an onion in the ground might as well get their information right here as looking at a
Yeah.
goofy little book on the on the stands. But so do you guys still have the Greer's Almanac here?
The Greer's Almanac's gone.
Oh, it's gone.
Out
It's
of
gone. That's right.
publication. But the Old Farmer's Almanac,
All Farmer's Act.
I buy one case of 24 every year, and I'll sell out.
Okay.
Before spring's over. Sometimes before the year ever gets here, but it gets a little slower every year.
Well, that's really interesting. I hope that you guys take advantage of all the old wisdom and maybe some of this new wisdom. Come on down to Mid-County Farm and Feed. Pick up an old almanac. Also, Ben David's here for a tick if you need advice, anything like that. Get some transplants and get ready for spring.
Yeah, man.
And we'll see you next time.